Well,
Mr. Robot fan?
you know, I can't say much about it, but there's actually not much to say at this point because they pushed it all later, so it's not going to premiere until October. So I'm really just getting started. So there hasn't, there's going to be some evolution in the music. It's going to start from where it left off. Probably won't go too far away from the established sound. But yeah, ask me in like a month or two. I'll know more.
It is really interesting just to go from season 1 to season 2. The quality of the music is similar. Obviously, the genesis of the music is similar. The amount of tension and distortion that matches what's happening in Elliot's mind, I don't know if you guys are.
Oh yeah, do you draw from, do you talk to the writers and stuff and say, is it a collaborative process, trying to come up with such an engaging score? I'm sorry, I can't talk to you.
Yeah, there's definitely some dialogue. Not a whole lot. I mean, the head of the whole show is Sam Esmail, and he's like so busy. It's hard to get for anyone to get like a lot of his attention. So we speak some, but yeah, it more comes about writing music and sending it to him, and then hearing what he has to say about it. It evolves. That's sort of the conversation through the music. And what you mentioned about the distorted sounds and everything going with Elliot's mind, like what I kind of realized at the end of season 1 is that for the most part, that's what the whole score is about. It's just like what's going on in Elliot's mind. Most of it, like I'd say probably 80%. It's like I'm just scoring what's happening in his head, which is pretty intense.
I'm curious, especially in this past season, I know there are a number of clues as one's watching the show. Are you guys up to date?
Oh yeah, we went to the offsite things.
So it starts with he actually is in prison. It appears that he's at his house, and I know there are little signals and clues and audio clues that happen, visual clues that happen that if the viewer's very astute, they'll catch up on. Did you also do some things with the score that helped support those clues, or that helped blend the reality with the fantasy of what's happening in Elliot's mind? Was that something that you did a little bit within the music?
We actually wanted to stay away from that. We just wanted to play it just totally straight, like what you were seeing was really what was happening. And we let the clues be in, like, visually or dialogue. I mean, there was this huge clue in the opening of the first episode, a song called Daydreaming. And I didn't realize it right at first, and then in hindsight I was like, they're basically telling the audience, like, in the first 5 minutes that, like, this is all a daydream. The first like 5 episodes.
Can I ask you some technical composition questions?
Sure.
So, first of all, do you write chronologically through the episode, or do you isolate certain scenes that need music that's sort of on a similar theme and do those segments?
I don't write chronologically. I typically am given an episode that's almost finished, and we decide where the music is going to be. So now I have sort of a list of cues that have to be written, and I'll start working on them, kind of usually in order of what I think is the most difficult, to get those started first. Like the longest ones, the ones that are going to be the most tricky to figure out. And then I'll get a number of them all in progress, and then I like to bounce back and forth. So I'll work on one, and I'll get to a point where I'm sort of stuck, and then I'll put that aside, open up another one, work on that one, get to the same point, and then I just sort of bounce, cycling through all these different pieces of music until they're done.
What's your sketching process like? Do you start with melody all the time, or do you start with the beat? Like, where do you build from?
It really depends on the cue. It could be either from melody or beats, or just some weird sound that I found that I think is going to be fun to play with.
How would something like Mr. Robot Robot compare thematically to some of your other work? I mean, do you see a lot of, I know that FEUD deals with a little bit of like the psychological. Are there similar elements, similar instruments, or are we working on two completely different planes? Like, kind of, are there, what kind of process would you go?
I mean, I think at the core of what the score is for both of those shows you mentioned, they're doing the same thing. They're trying to help tell the story. And the storyteller wants to use the music to help tell the story. So that's what they're doing exactly the same thing in both shows, but they do it in very different ways. I mean, Mr. Robot is almost 100% electronic. There's a couple of organic instruments that float in and out here and there. FEUD was totally organic orchestral template. So all the standard sounds you would get in orchestra. So it was a very different process for me to work on those shows, just from a technical standpoint.
I might do anything. I couldn't do it. And then like
Positional standpoint.
Press yesterday. Like when I was
FEUD, I have set, like I know these are my instruments. Mr. Robot,
well, no,
anything's my instrument. It's like it's sound. I can, so the possibilities are sort of infinite, which is really great on one hand, but it's also can be a little overwhelming. Where should I go today? I don't know. Over here.
On something like Mr. Robot, where you're using a lot of found sounds and different instruments, what's it like working with the sound designer to get that sort of overall feeling of the show, and when the line between music and sound is kind of blurred more than it is?
I mean, we don't work that closely together. I mean, I get some of their rough sound design in the cuts that I start working with, and I obviously will write music that I feel fits with what's there. But it's not actually the finished sound design. They're still working on stuff. The music and sound finally come together on the mixing stage, and at that point, the sound designer's there, the mixers are there, and they make sure everything is kind of happy together. There was an episode in season 1 where we did actually sort of collaborate. He gave me this sound. It's kind of like an industrial pile driver. And I actually used it in music as like kind of a rhythmic thing, and it really helped set the mood of this particular scene. They're on the waterfront, and forgetting the character's name, is holding a gun to Elliot's head and gunning him.
What level of mixing and post-production is your music at when you submit it to the post-production? Like how you do all your mixing yourself and before it's sent to the dubbing stage?
I do mixing, and then I give them what we call stems. So a lot of the elements are split up into different audio tracks. And if you play them all together, you hear my mix. But then you can now play with it. You can take something out, or turn up this, turn that.
So if they feel strongly the cellos should be lower, they can turn them down.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite found sound that you used? And you mentioned the pile driver sound. I think I remember the episode that you were talking about. Do you have a favorite found sound or instrument that kind of maybe makes it Mr. Robot?
I'm either way into it 1 year or
like I remember when they done the Dark Knight, and the guy said one of the key things to Joker's score is he ran a razor blade over the violin strings, so something like that. Is there something like that that you work with?
Not so much with Mr. Robot, I guess, because so much is created electronically. I mean, I have some favorite instruments that I use, certain like virtual synthesizers that have just been, they're in almost every cue of the show. They're very useful. They just have a nice character that I like. But yeah, maybe that'll be something for season 3 that I can get into a little more, like actually recording some found sounds and bring that into
Each character has their own particular, theme or particular thing to associate them with. I mean, that's usually my question when it comes to music. Is like, where do you go? Where do you associate with each character? Like, do you have Elliot? She mentioned the very intense roster. Is there a particular theme for the other characters? Say Eagle Corp?
There was an Evil Corp theme sort of early on in season 1, and you know, my approach with the themes has been a little bit sort of loose, not very like every character has to have their own theme and it must be done in this way. It's more like I start writing music that I feel for the scene and that scene, and out of that sort of evolves in collaboration with the post-production team. It's like, oh, this seems to be working really well for the Evil Corp scenes. Let's use this. Now this seems to be working really well for Elliot, and so the themes kind of evolve rather than me sitting down and consciously writing, which is sort of breaking a little bit of the composing for film rules. But
Gonna break the rules.
Can I ask a question about the title sequence with you? Because I understand that you were quite involved with the graphic design team and really working out the whole structure of the title sequence. Was it like to actually, I know you were creating the music for it, but did you actually have that sort of close collaboration with the graphic team? It's a very unique sequence and it got an Emmy nomination as well.
well, I mean, I didn't actually have a collaboration with them.
I was lied to.
But maybe, because I've told this story before, and maybe it got sort of, you know, just mutated a little bit. What was different about that was because the main title was animated, they started off with stills. So they had all these still images showing what they were going to animate. And when I got asked to write the music, that's what they sent me. So they sent me 120 still images. I took them and put them in a QuickTime movie file, like a slideshow. So 2 every second. So they wanted a minute-long piece of music, and they weren't following any rhythm. They were just something that I could look at as an inspiration. And I wrote the music, and they loved the music, and they asked for a couple of changes. Final approval happened, and then the animators animated to the music. And so that's kind of what the collaboration, it wasn't a close collaboration, but in a way it was different, because usually it's the other way. I'm sent some video that now I have to write music to, and this was sort of the other way around.
I'm sure Ryan Murphy also has a little sense of direction for the entire story, wanting to be a little more plastic. They've now pulled their hands off this.
Without a doubt, those were the first conversations. Orchestral sound that evokes 1960s Hollywood. Sad and dramatic to tell the story of the two women. And then also a little bit of fun, also 1960s Hollywood, fun, jazzy, Latin influence. Those were the parameters that I sat down with to write.
They had a lot now.
Well, with Jessica Jones, as you saw, if you saw season 1, that was its own sort of particular style and shape, which was a more intimate, darker series. Miss Ritter did such a fantastic job with it. We tried to create a kind of a newer noir kind of sound for that show, and I'm happy to say I'm working on season 2 right now, and it is really good. I mean, you know, the characters are growing, and you know, it's just so nice to be seeing Miss Ritter and all the others working, Carrie Ann Moss and so forth. When I was asked about Inhumans, it couldn't have been more different, because it's one of their older stories, and it's a very epic story about, as you will know, it's about a colony of Inhumans that live on the far side of the moon, and they and for reasons that will be revealed in the story, they have to come to Earth, and there's a big story there about them coming to Earth. So there's a tremendous amount of there's just a grandness to it. You're in 2 different worlds. You're on the moon, you're on the Earth. There's people transporting around. There's the people with different kinds of superpowers. It couldn't be any more different, because it involves not one primary character, but at least 5 or 6 that have unique special powers that are part of a royal family. So and they let me do it with a 70-piece orchestra, which was really wonderful. And the first 2 episodes, as you may know, are going to be combined into a IMAX movie on September 1st, which they're mixing right now. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, no, sorry, next Monday or Tuesday, I'll be seeing the IMAX final mix just to make sure everything's sounding good. It's very exciting. It was so. I knew it was a big story when I read the script, but man, when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, this is big." There were so many huge moments of action and tremendous
Very different from Jessica Jones, which is such a personal. It's one woman's story interacting with a big world, and in this case, it almost seems like it's a big world interacting with us. The Inhumans are very much a broad, very different group of human beings.
They are. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Jessica Jones's world is basically a few blocks of New York City, and the Inhumans is part the moon and then part Earth, and it's in very different places. The one thing that ties Marvel together for me, though, is the reason why I think the stories sort of survive generations is they are stories about people. Like, you do connect with people, even though it's a bigger family, and even though there are more characters, you have really specific connections to what these characters are, who they are, what their challenges are. I always thought Marvel for me was. I think we all have had moments in our life where we don't feel like we fit in anywhere, all that kind of stuff. I think Marvel stories, at the core, their core message has always been, it's totally okay to be who you want to be. And Comic-Con is like the ultimate epicenter for that message, which is why I so love coming here.
With a show that's an ensemble like The Inhumans, what are some of the ways in which the character themes you develop help to define the characters and separate them individually?
That is a great question. I will say that when I read the script, there was a kingdom, where they live, and I never pronounce it right. But I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it because I always confuse it. But I started to try to come up with a theme for the overall kingdom and the royal family, and I just started working on that before I even saw any footage. And that was just sort of floating around in my head. And then finally, when I got the footage, I started to experiment with it. And then there were other characters whose intentions, whether they're good or bad, started to emerge, and I began to develop a theme for them. And it's the only way I can describe it is I try to make it an organic process, and then I run these themes up the flagpole. I run them up past people, and what I love about this is that they like the themes that I've done, and they are interweaving. So I'm a big fan of themes, and I'm a big fan of interactive, of thematic things coming back in. And even if the viewer doesn't know it, you know it. You know, you're affected by it. That's what my goal is as a composer. If I get better, if I could just get a little better at doing it. So it starts with the page. It starts with the written page, and then me sitting at a regular piano and just plunking out what I think might be a good central main theme for this character or that character. And they thankfully liked it. And then I had to write a main title for the IMAX movie, which was a further evolution of that theme. So, knock wood, everyone's been happy with the show.
And when we talked to you about Homeland a few years ago, I remember you talking about sort of matching that show's quiet intensity with really minimalist music.
Yes.
You're working on something like Designated Survivor that is bananas and just like a twist a minute, action.
Yeah.
Do you raise, or do you just create more music and more intense music? Do you match that tone, or do you pull back again to try and balance?
Well, you are again asking another wonderful question. It's about owning the language of each show, and each show has its own particular style and language. When I have worked on Homeland, if I've come back to it after working on a big action thing, sometimes my first cues will be just a little busy because I just can't help myself. And then you're like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm in this country now, so I have to make these kinds of adjustments. The music, the function of the music has to be the same. It still has to tell the story properly. So if you put Homeland music in the Inhumans, it's most likely not going to fly, just because some of it, the scope and shape of it. Having said that, sometimes you make some really bizarre discoveries. I remember one of the people of the Inhumans heard some Homeland music that aired. I said, I kind of like that was a neat little song there. And I said, really? And so I learn a lot from producers, especially ones who don't know anything about music. They just say, this speaks to me for perhaps this kind of character or this kind of storyline. Those are breadcrumb gifts of gold when someone gives me that kind of information. I'm sorry if I'm speaking too fast.
No, you're okay. And they're cutting us off, but I want to ask you really quickly, what was the decision to go with the orchestra for Inhumans? Was that something that came from the producer?
The moment I read the script, when I went in for the interview, I said, I cannot imagine a story without a large orchestral sonority of some sort, orchestral ensemble. It involved two planets, it involved all kinds of incredible powers, things that were just jumping off the page. I said, I think this is an epic story, and I said, if I'm getting that wrong, then I'll stand up and say thank you. But they kind of got it. It is a story though that's epic, but at the same time, it is a family. I actually think it's a royal family drama. That people under extraordinary circumstances, and the relationships are what I think drive any good story, no matter how epic it is. So that's why I've liked this journey. But I will tell you that those first two episodes were like, I think together 71 minutes of music, and it was a lot, and the train is moving. So
really quick, I vaguely heard you mention themes and how they interchange.
Yep.
No spoilers, but would you think that there might be themes for each character? Is that something we should look for, or?
I don't think it is unreasonable to think that there is more than one or two themes in the Inhumans. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Excellent.
And that's not I don't think giving away the barn. I just think that's just saying, as with any show I work on, certain themes emerge. But I will say that with the Inhumans, there were so many interesting characters right out of the gate. And you don't know where they're going. I mean, I don't like to read beyond the third or fourth script because I want to be a fan. I want to find out as we go. If I know that someone's going to die, I hate that because it's like a tell. I'll let it show up in the music somewhere.
Everything within 5 feet of my desk. I make the sounds of the percussion on my wooden table, and I have an acoustic guitar, and I sing and cello all around me. But then on the Marvel show, it's almost like a Depeche Mode record or something. Like it's very new wavy and vintage analog synthesizers, like early 1980s stuff. And that's the stuff that I grew up loving and listening to. So I think in my in my dream scenario, I've had these keyboards sitting around, these vintage synths, and I never get to use them. And so getting to do that on the Marvel show, Runaways, is really, really cool and special. It's great because I get to exercise a totally different muscle in my, a different muscle, and it's great.
That's awesome that you're using some authentic vintage recording devices from the 80s.
Yeah, I kind of need to. I come from the singer-songwriter world and working and being in a band for so long, and every time I'd make a record in the studio, we'd record sometimes to tape and go analog and create our own sounds. And so I'm so used to working with vintage instrumentation, and in this world with television film composing, with how compressed your time is, you don't have that luxury sometimes. But I still I just sleep a little less, and I'm able to pull out all this gear that I love to use. Thank you.
Do you think that there's when you say that you're working with certain types of instruments and things, do different characters have certain types of instruments? Are you starting to develop themes for different characters? I know that you guys are premiering November 2nd. Congratulations.
This is for Runaways, you're saying, right?
Yes,
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there themes that each of the characters we can expect from them? Or?
Yeah, I think this show is. There are themes that I'm developing right now that are more for general types of moments that characters are experiencing, not necessarily built around the characters just yet. That could evolve. I just started working on the second episode, but in the pilot, I spent a lot of time just finding a sound for the emotional moments, so that there's a thread for the emotional moments between the characters, and then some of the more thrilling moments have their kind of theme going on.
Do you have a favorite moment? I mean, like something that you're just sitting there and you're going, I can't wait for the audience to hear that.
Oh, the opening sequence is so good. I can't say anything, but it's so good. The first like 2 minutes are like edge of your seat, really, really cool. And it's funny, one of the actresses, I had to work with her on something that we're doing together in a later episode, and so she came over to my studio the other day, and she said the score of the show makes her feel like Blade Runner or something. Like she's like, it's just very, and that was a huge compliment hearing that from these like really cool hip people that are working on the show, and so there's this underbelly of this. The synthesizers, you can hear it, and it's just there's this constant feeling of this tension that's going to be really nice to experience, I think.
Speaking of Blade Runner, do you have an all-time favorite score?
Yes.
Blade Runner.
No. Yeah, my favorites. I have so many, but I gravitate towards the most simple stuff that is evocative. And it's Angelo Badalamente's score for Twin Peaks.
Wow. You know,
That's my favorite score of all time. You hear that theme, the da 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 da. I mean, you hear that throughout the whole these first 2 seasons, and it's so effective and haunting, and just stays with you. And it's very rare that, and it's not like it was it's like this big, bombastic, frightening instrumentation. It wasn't. He was using, I think he was using like a Rhodes and some synths, but it's so haunting.
It's got an interesting orchestral feel, even though it's all electronic score.
Right, exactly. And I think I pull a page out of that book also for Runaways. I mean, it's very much it's a different sound, but it has some of that kind of like evocative, haunting quality that I love from that original show.
will there be any elements, both Runaways and This Is Us are kind of stories about blended families, about unique families. Will there be any elements, perhaps family scores, warm sounds, those kind of things that you bring over to Runaways, or will it purely be that ethereal Depeche Mode type? You said Depeche Mode. I am really excited for that.
It's like Violator is a big influence for me on the score.
So will there be any of that being brought over to any of the warm family stuff?
Yeah, there is. I mean, like, even looking like in Depeche Mode records, like Somebody was like an emotional song, one of the best like little love songs ever. But that was still part of their kind of their whatever they were weaving. It was part of that cloth. And here too, there are these emotional moments that have these sweet, like romantic melodies, but that are presented in the synths. Yes, it's there, and hopefully people will be moved by it. I hope so. Yeah.
You're recording all of that. You're playing all the instruments yourself.
Yes, on Runaways I am. This is us I do as well.
What's the size and makeup of your team?
Size and makeup of my team, I have a great team, and so I've got 3 people that kind of assist me on my projects, because I also have, this fall I have 2 more shows on top of those 2, so it's just, I have the Royals, that was like that I've been working on forever, and a new CBS comedy with John Larroquette. So I needed to be myself and I. And so I need this team to help me kind of deliver everything. Yes. Latest full, yes. But I'm doing a lot of the writing now. Like I feel like these shows, the beauty is that like some of my favorite moments with television or picture and music is when you also have, I can pre-write pieces that editors can cut around sometimes, and it helps elevate even the music. It makes me look better sometimes. And so I get to do that too on these shows, which is really special.
When you're working on multiple shows simultaneously, do you have a schedule that you stick to? Like Tuesdays is This Is Us Day, and Wednesdays are Runaways, or?
No, I mean, the only thing I stick to is no sleep. That's about it. Yeah.
No sleep.
No sleep. That's my schedule.
Strong coffee.
Yeah, a lot of coffee, no sleep, and just try to like exhale when you start working. Because it's very stressful.
You must also feel excited and proud of the recognition that This Is Us got.
Oh yeah, I just there was a dream scenario for all of us on that show. The show got 11 Emmy nominations last week, and it doesn't have the bells and whistles and a lot of other stuff, which I love. But for something like a simple family drama, to connect with people like it has is just rare and special, and I've never in my life experienced something that kind of had this perfect marriage of being artistic and then also commercially successful at the same time. And that's just so rare, special.
The music's beautiful. I
Thank you so
enjoyed
much.
hearing it live. I know we spoke before you started playing, but was it as fun to just be with a group of fans and the other actors?
Oh yeah, as I said, like I come from the band world, and I spent so many years making albums and touring, and now I don't do it as much anymore. And so getting to be on stage, and I performed the This Is Us score and some songs from it. It's just special, kind of like it brought me back to my glory days or something. But it was just special, and for fans to see something, for it to be able to live in a live environment was special for me because I didn't know if it could. And after that performance, I was like, I can go on tour on this maybe one day, and that was really cool. And composers are doing that now, and it's like composers have gone back to being in bands or something. It feels like that.
Did you rewatch the movie? Did you have any inspiration to get involved from what had come before? Were you approached as a brand new entity? We're taking this on a new journey.
Yeah, that's kind of where we ended up. I definitely, when I first was asked to audition for it, to demo for it, I rewatched the movie and got into the sound and everything. But then the demo, they asked me to write. They basically gave me 80 songs from a Spotify playlist, and the songs range from Sonny Rollins to Daft Punk to Ravel to all the stuff. And they gave me a show Bible and the episode 1 script, and then they told me to write the song based on all of that. And so then I wrote this piece of music that I thought fused all these things together. And it was interesting that that's what got me the job. That when we wrote for the show, it was completely different from either of those. And we decided to make it a lot more. He's really inspired by Kubrick and Spike Lee with the way they approach scoring their films. And so the music we had was mostly orchestral, classical music, or intimate, jazz, traditional jazz.
Were you able to record those things live, or were you asked to keep it in the box?
All the jazz stuff we recorded live, and for the classical stuff, it was only if we had soloists, we would have somebody come in and record those parts live. And there's a lot of piano parts, a lot of piano stuff I was able to play myself, and everything.
And how do you approach mixing your music? At what stage of production do you submit it to the post-production team?
Well, I don't really submit it until basically the last minute sometimes in TV, but I definitely mix kind of as I'm working, try to get it so that things naturally duck in and out of dialogue, so I don't worry about that. And then I have a mixing engineer that goes the second time over and mixes it again. And then we deliver usually have to deliver the night before they start their dub mix with all the stems and everything so they can.
How did you get involved in composing for film and television?
Well, it's funny. I was just telling somebody else that I decided I wanted to do this when I was maybe 11 or 12. I told my parents I had a plan to go to school for jazz piano, tour with jazz artists, and then tour with my own band, and then transition into film composing. And that's kind of what I try to figure out how to do. Yeah.
Was there a score when you were a kid that sort of inspired you to want to do that?
Not one score, but I think just John Williams in general just like defined the sound of my childhood. I feel like because my dad was such a huge fan of like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all those movies, and then obviously for me it was like E.T. and Home Alone and all that. And so I think watching all those movies and being a musician at the age of 4, I just kind of immediately noticed how much music had an impact on how much I loved that stuff.
I want to bounce back just about going back to the fact that the score ended up being an orchestral score.
Yeah.
Especially after doing the type of audition you did with so many different types of musical influences. Was it exciting to have that sort of transition where you were working with the scripts and the characters, but having started with this vision of all these different styles to more of a traditional orchestral and then jazz, which is I can understand that feels like very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it was exciting for me because I'm not afforded the opportunity very often to write such orchestral music. I think first because if you look at my resume, I was trained in jazz, and although I had like classical composition training, it's not really shown as much as far as like the things that I've been able to do. And then outside of that, it's been a lot of like music that sounds a bit more inspired by maybe like Steve Reich from the Class, or a bit more minimal or things like that. And so having the opportunity to be able to write something so opulent was exciting, because I feel like I'm not getting that opportunity very often. Yeah.
Do you have a dream project that you'd like to work on? Maybe something original, or like join DC or those guys?
Oh man, I mean, there's so much awesome stuff out there. I mean, I think one of the, as far as Marvel stuff, it would have been dope to work on the Black Panther film. I mean, Ludwig, the composer, is a friend of mine. He's amazing. But I think I just know it's going to be such an incredible film, and I'm interested to see how they choose to score it. Also, Deadpool was pretty awesome, and the way that Junkie XL worked on that was really awesome. But I think the Batman movies that were with Christian Bale, especially like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger, I think exactly.
Any Chris Nolan.
Any Chris, for sure. But just being able to work on the way that they were able to make these things that it's like big tentpole films feel intimate, feel like character studies. I think anything that does that is something I'm excited about, which I think is happening with a lot of these comic book heroes, like Logan just recently, basically like a Western. Yeah, it's really amazing.
The game doesn't exist when you're writing when you're writing the music. They send like quick times of like gameplay, so like here's what it's maybe gonna look like, and they send you a quick time and like you watch it. So I score it like a movie, because that's what I know, right? Like I know how to score movies. I know how to score television and narrative. So I treated it like a narrative, like it's a story.
How do you handle the sort of choose your own adventure part where you must be at a fork in the road?
So the implementation was done by someone else. Like I don't do the implementation, all I had to do was the music. So they would call me and they say, okay, so in this part, the boat is going down the thing and we need this type of piece of music here. So I wrote that, and then they were like, there's this moment that they can choose to go one way or another, and we just need 2 different melodies to play over the same music. So if they go left, this melody plays. If they go right, so I'm like, okay.
So something that can transition into either
so
option.
They just basically tell me what they want, and I send it to them. The team knows like the parts that they need, and I just sort of deliver music. I know other guys who write games and they're very into the whole like, I have to figure out what it's going to sound like if he just does this, and I didn't do any of that. I just sort of wrote it like you're in a movie. And I did this other one just recently. Madden 18 is coming out. And inside, it's a football game, but so inside of it it's called first-person player. I don't know. But no, it's not a first-person shooter. It's a football game, but inside of it, there's a movie. Like a movie plays. It's a 2-hour-long movie inside the game, where you can make choices for the characters in the movie, and I scored that, which was interesting. But again, never got to play that because it wasn't done when I was writing the music. So I treated it like a movie.
Right.
Because it was a movie. That's what I was like, it's a movie, right? They're like, well, it's a game. I was like, but it looks like a movie, it feels like a movie, and you're telling a story like a movie. It must be a movie, right? And yeah. So, it's interesting. It's fun.
So, Legion, after Fargo, reconnecting with Noah Hawley, very different sort of sound and approach.
Yeah.
How now that first season's completed, looking back on it, how do you feel about the progress of approaching this completely different story and a Marvel entity and working with different characters?
The thing that I did when I was done with the show was I called Noah and I thanked him for giving me the opportunity to make the album that I had always wanted to make my entire life. I'd always wanted to make... When I listened to the soundtrack, it's the record that I had dreamed of making when I was like 8 years old. Like the sound of it, the instruments, the way I put it together. And it was only by accident that I got to do that. When we started talking about what the sound of the show was, and this ability to slip back and forth between reality and non-reality, and then to invite the viewer to join with us in the lack of the knowledge as to what was real and what was not real. I started to think about how to put synthesizers and what those sounds were, along with orchestral instruments, and then how can that come together to create a beauty and a cacophony at the same time. That idea has been sort of messing around in my head since I was a kid, and I heard Pink Floyd for the very first time. And we talked about Pink Floyd as being a sort of a touchstone for the sound of some of the score, because they were the sound of schizophrenia in the 70s. Like when you listen to Dark Side of the Moon, you're like, oh yeah, that guy's crazy, right? So I went and I found a synthesizer that was used on that record, and I implemented that into there, which something I'd always wanted to do. So I would say like it's some of the most thrilling moments I've had making music. Is making the music. I've never gotten to you don't get to do that much for many projects. Like basically go in and do whatever you want. It's interesting, like
Full-on freedom?
Well, full-on freedom in context of what we were doing. Like, I had a goal, and that goal had to be met. I had a set of parameters, so I had to stay within those parameters. But I mean, that was like putting me in a football field. You know what I mean? Like, I was very free to do a lot of really fucking crazy stuff, and it was okay. Sometimes I'd get that note like, can you make it any more crazy? Like, what can you do here to make it so we don't even feel that the rhythm is right? Like, how do we make it feel like totally off balance? And like, I'm like, I can do that even more, because part of what Noah had to do to me was pull me, because I was hesitant, because usually you write for a movie, you write for TV, you have a set of parameters, you want to stay within it, you don't want to go too far outside of it. But he was like, no, get over there and push me over there. So that kind of a relationship with a filmmaker is very rare, and it couldn't have been more thrilling.
And speaking of Noah, you're still doing Fargo, and
we just finished.
And every season you have to sort of start again because it's an anthology show.
Yes.
What were some of the qualities that defined your work in season 3 that were different from seasons 1 and 2?
Okay, so one of the very first things he said was, I've been listening to a lot of Beethoven. Can you write a piano sonata for me? And I literally was on the phone, and I didn't even know what to say. So then I said, okay. And I hung up the phone with others. We talked about whatever other stuff. And I went and I wrote a piano, a 9-minute piano sonata. I'd never done that before. And that I needed to find some inspiration. So I read the script a number of times, and what I realized was this piano sonata was going to be for Nikki, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character, who to me, it was the opposite of her, because this piano sonata needed to be beautiful, and she was this badass, right? So I wrote it and I sent it to him, and he loved it, and that. So there was that. there was the Russian contingent of the whole show, like the Russians are coming. So I did sort of delve deep into Russian composers and you know, trying to find what they were feeling at the time that they were writing these pieces of music, and trying to channel some of that feeling in some of the music. So it was a very sort of Eastern European type score in that way. And then I took that piano sonata and then made it into an orchestral symphonic piece. And thus sort of giving the same character two sides. There's a very aggravated side and a very soft and beautiful side, which becomes very apparent in episodes 8, 9, and 10 of the season. So there's that. Like, Fargo is such a conundrum for me because I get very satisfied with the themes that I've written for a season, and then I have to basically throw them all away for the next season, except for the main theme, which we obviously kept throughout the whole season. But you know, it's a daunting task to have to rewrite for the same tone. You know, so the tone has to stay the same. We're still Fargo, but how do I represent these characters in a different melodic and musical way? It can be very daunting.
This year, I recorded with a 60-piece orchestra in Nashville, and I've also recorded here in LA. That the players in Los Angeles are just phenomenal. So, but that was for a ride at Universal Studios theme park, and it really lent itself to that particular music. For Blood Drive, a lot of it was in the box, but that being said, the score was heavily synth, and I play guitar and I play bass, which is a big part of the score as well. And then on top of that, I had live trumpet, an opera singer for the Spaghetti Western episode, and I had a live cellist that, there's a huge, underneath all the gore and the seemingly salacious surface of Blood Drive, there's a ton of story, a ton of emotion, a ton of love underneath it all. So the cello was part of gluing all that together.
Right. And working in so many different genres and sort of types of media, what do you have? What are some of the major differences you find between working on something like a ride versus a TV show, film, live music, that sort of thing?
I think it's funny. I think like anything else, the fundamentals almost always stay the same. Whether you're working on a ride or a TV show or a film or a short film or even a TV commercial, you are there to help the filmmakers tell the story. You're there to inform emotion. You're there to really support. So I think for me, I bring that to whatever I'm doing.
And where do you start? Do you think about building character themes, or where do you start?
It's, as far as where I start with something, it's different. It's almost different every time, and I think that's what keeps it fun and interesting. And sometimes it's a lot of times when you're writing, whatever instrument you're writing on has a huge impact on what you write. So if you pull up some long strings, for example, you might end up writing something with a lot of whole notes, so sometimes it starts out with just finding the sounds that I want to use, and then let that kind of lead me down the path. And I'm a very motivic, like leitmotif-driven composer. So I will definitely establish the theme, even just on piano first, and so much can grow from there.
Michael, I'm curious. I understand with TV you have a much faster turnaround with a lot of other projects. And I've always been curious how composers deal with potential writer's block. And do you essentially ever have music where you say, that's not right for this episode, but I'm going to put it over in the maybe pile for something down the road that maybe I have a much shorter window to, or do you have to just literally throw it out every single one and start fresh for each episode?
I think because the turnarounds in TV are so fast, and they're becoming fast in film home as well because, well, the metaphor I use is, or the analogy I use is, it's like a relay race, and you're the last runner. You're the last one to get the baton as the composer. So you have to make up for every day they had a problem on set, any of that. It's all compressed. So for me personally, that helps my writing because you just don't have a choice. And it makes you very often just end up going with the first thing that comes to you, and I find that that's often the best thing. As far as stuff that doesn't get used, one thing about music I think is to your point, is it ends up getting used somewhere. It may be like 3 episodes later, this cue didn't work out for this episode, but 3 episodes later, oh, this would be perfect for that. So it's never it's never wasted effort. Yeah.
I want to ask about Shark Week. How did you approach that? Are there certain instruments that you think of, like, I'm writing for sharks, so I'm going to use sort of classic, like the Jaws theme instruments, or did that play in at all, the idea of like what a shark is, or are you just sort of writing pretty things?
Well, a couple things. So I've worked with Shark Week for some time, long enough that I've actually been in the water with white sharks. I've actually been in Shark Week shows, and I know what it's like to write like from that kind of fear. Even though, I mean, and don't get me wrong, it's not to vilify sharks, as you know from watching documentaries, they really are not out for us. But I guess to answer your question about how would I approach writing for sharks, is that I look at them as characters just like anything else. They're a character in the story. Even if you're writing for a documentary that's completely factual, it's still a story, and that's what is always going to bring viewers in. Is like, what's the story? What's the arc? And all the shows that I've scored for Shark Week has been exactly that. The sharks are very often named, not to anthropomorphize them, but just to kind of give you a through line. Oh, we're following this same shark, whether it's a migration or what's happening with the behavior. So I can give you more if you want on instrumentation. Just that I've done 5 Shark Week shows, and each time, like one time I went full orchestral, recorded with a live orchestra. One of the more recent ones was all synth-based, and again, it just comes back to story.
How do you approach instrument selection and knowing what you want to do for any given show?
I mean, sometimes, very often, I'll look at picture, or even when I read the script, it just comes to you. I mean, I love writing for brass, and with Blood Drive, when I started reading about the character of Grace, this femme fatale, I immediately thought of the surf guitar, tremolo, like that she could walk away from a scene and have like a quip, and then just do that strum on the tremolo guitar, and that's exactly, and it ended up working great with picture. And for Arthur, the hero of the show, his theme is actually quite almost like fanfare, almost what you would hear on brass. But I reprise that on all kinds of different instruments.
And then when the action's happening, you just ramp up the tempo.
Yeah, well, it's funny because a lot of times, yes, that is absolutely what's happening. The tempo gets kicked into high gear. But I'm finding what happens more and more often now is there's so much sound design and so many things happening in the effects that sometimes when the action's happening, I'm actually pulling back on the score to let that stuff breathe, and just picking my moments to really get out there. I kind of look at the dialogue kind of like the lead vocal, and I'm the band. So.
I started doing singer-songwriter type stuff when I was 13 and got into high school. Started playing guitar and didn't have a lot of friends. Was in my attic a lot of the time and watching music videos and writing songs.
Not having any friends.
And eventually, when I got to college, started a band and ended up touring around a little bit, and then after college, I needed a job, so I started bartending so I could still play gigs. And after that, the other band members kind of wanted to settle down and start families and get real jobs, which I completely understood. But at that point, I was like, okay, I got to figure out what else I really want to do at this point. So I looked into the USC film scoring program, and at that point, I really didn't know much about film music at all. So it's been an incredible journey for the course of the last 10, 11 years at this point. So.
How did you break in? So you graduated from your program,
Yep.
and then how do you get started in this field?
I was very fortunate in getting connected with another composer named KRIS who's... Yes, exactly. So he was looking for an assistant right at the same time as I was graduating, and it was a very good fit between us. So I ended up spending almost 8 years starting out as an assistant, doing some menial or technology work or whatnot, and that eventually grew into some additional writing, and it was an 8-year mentorship, and I'm very grateful for that time, and I learned a lot and got to be part of Frozen.
So when you spend so much time working with someone who you're sort of following their creative vision and supporting that, how is the transition into being the sort of leading creative force behind a piece of music?
It's funny. While I was working for him, doing some additional music, he would then review it to sound like him, of course, and he'd say, "That's a Jakeism. Get away from that, and make it sound more like me. Do this, that, the other thing." And so I would always hold on to my Jakeisms, and that now I can use them freely in the projects that I'm working with. But I learned a great deal from him, and so I'm grateful for that time.
So I'm curious, animation to live action.
Yes.
Do you find one more challenging? Which one do you find more challenging? Which one is more satisfying?
Both have their own challenges and satisfactions to them. In terms of the style of writing, I think animation is probably more challenging. You're hitting or commenting or acknowledging the things that are happening visually much more often with a lot of these shows. So with live action,
I'm saying hi. Bye. Nice to meet you.
A lot of the time you can kind of just set a tone or a mood in a live action piece, as opposed to being so busy and always moving and kind of keeping things going. Whereas with animation, it's you got to keep stuff going, and there's no reusing the same piece of music because everything that you're writing music to is different for every episode. DINOTRUX is incredibly musically satisfying to me. Every episode is a 23-minute mini movie. And they are treated very cinematically. It's long story arcs. They're 2, 3, 4, 5-minute cues as opposed to little 10, 15-second stingers that are commenting on the fast-paced comedy. Not to say that that's not satisfying, because I think it makes the comedy funnier as music helps. But they have their ups and downs.
When you're working on something like Piper that doesn't have any dialogue and the music is really telling the entire audio story, how do you approach carrying what I would interpret as a lot more weight in terms of storytelling?
It really is all about that, just storytelling, and what is Piper thinking or feeling the entire time. You are with him, you are in his point of view, and he has crazy emotions. He's either scared to death or the wave is coming, or has this just amazing celebratory part at the end. And working with the composer Adrian Ballou, he had a lot of really great ideas that he had put together for the theme, and when I came in, it was just a matter of kind of organizing a couple things and smoothing out a lot of transitions and really kind of honing in and making the sonic palette of it all feel a little bit more cohesive.
I want to ask you about orchestrating as a job. When a composer hands you a piece that's sort of mostly a melody, how do you approach orchestrating it and really pulling out all of the sort of undercurrent themes and the harmonies to that while staying really true to that original?
Breaking it, depending on how it's delivered to me, if it's, I tend to break it down first, just to what is the melody and what is the progression. Doesn't matter what it's played on. Like this is what it is. here's where it's big, and then here's where it's small, and it's finding the contour and the shape of the melody as applied to the story that we're telling. From there, it's about finding what sounds are really working for the visual. In Piper, for instance, we used a lot of marimba and mallet just to kind of, it's light and it's cute, and it gives a nice pulse to it without being too abrasive or anything. So, the idea that I brought to the table with that was for that to kind of be the motor of the undercurrent to the piece, and then just incorporating the orchestra kind of on top of that to take over the melodies, or providing counter melodies, or a reharmonization in order to get a different feeling when it's either going to be really bright or we get to that scare tone.
And what's it like working with directors? How much guidance do you get?
Totally project dependent. I have worked with some that are so easygoing and really just trust in you to do what you do and what they hired you to do. And of course there are always comments, but they're more macro comments of, I want to feel the emotion of this character versus playing the emotion of, the scene in general. Like, I want to be inside her head. Notes like that, like, again, storytelling notes, and those make so much sense to me. When we get to, other people that may be more hyper-focused on the smaller little incremental things, this can be a little bit more difficult.
Oh, no, you can go ahead if you have another question.
I think I was going to just follow up on the inspiration aspect of things.
Yeah.
You're sitting there with a handful project, you basically say, what would be a typical turnaround time for you?
For each of these animated shows, typical turnaround time is about 2 weeks. From the time I get it until the first presentation, where I have to have everything completed. And then after that, it's about another week before I'll get notes, and then I have to turn around another version, and then in a couple days later, it's going to the dub stage to get dropped in. They're not locking their animation until about a month before, and so they're handing me, that locked cut. They're handing the sound effects editors that locked cut, and so we're all working in tandem. We have no idea what each other is doing, though. So when it finally gets to the dub stage, then now they're kind of going through and figuring out what's going to work and what's not, and how things are going to actually come together and play.
3 weeks for about 25 minutes of music?
Yeah, for DINOTRUX, it's wall to wall. It's about 22 minutes per episode. SCOOBY was about 14 to 15. So yeah, it's a lot of music.
Yeah, I would say that seems a little stressful too, because if you're thinking about it, okay, you kind of don't. I mean, how much do you
can't
get?
think about it. Yeah.
That's the only thing I could. What would you do? I would lose my mind.
That's it. It really. The first starting out a TV show is a little bit tough. You have to really find the tone, and that the first few episodes are challenging. Once you do that, you just kind of got to run with your gut instincts and just trust that what you're going to do is right.
Now, do they give you at least some of the plots for the future? Because I'm sure they have a bunch written out. So, and obviously
they do. And if things are going to play into each other, Scooby was very much a one-off type thing. However, DINOTRUX has large seasonal story arcs. So I needed to know that in, episode 1 of season 3, that character Splitter was going to eventually team up with the character that we met in episode 6, Blade, who meets up with Pounder and Ten to all form together. How are all of their themes going to eventually overlap and interact with one another to create the bad guy team that is formed by the end of that season?
And I'm sure because, you are just so musically inclined, do you ever just have things that you maybe thought of in the back of your head or written years ago where you're like, what, I could take a piece
Absolutely.
of this? So it kind of makes this, not that it's easy at all, but I feel like that might help.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a full piece, but maybe a device. And I'll use that tool in order to then build the piece of music that I'm going for that. So maybe I'll take one little idea and I will just elaborate, develop, and kind of take it to the next step.
Because I don't know about anybody else, but if I had that would not be the job for me, because I would be focusing on oh my god, we have this done, and that would just be so. But thank you, because the music that you've done is just
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, because we've enjoyed things because of it.
I was going to ask about Star Wars Detours. It's can you tell us what's going on? Because the last I heard, it was kind of in limbo.
It's funny. I was just talking about it. As far as I know, it's still in limbo. And every time I run into Seth Green, he says, "Oh, I think it's going to be out soon." And every time I run into Matt Seinreich, he's like, "Yes, Seth is an optimist." And so I don't know. It's for those who don't know, Seth. Both of Seth and Matt and Seth MacFarlane worked on Star Wars Detours, which is the funniest parody of Star Wars you've ever seen, directed by Todd Grimes, who did an amazing job. Great cast. Pretty good music, I might say, including song parodies. We did a parody of the Monkees at one point called The Modals, and I'm friends with Peter Tork from the Monkees, so I played it for him. He loved it. But at any rate, it's I'm hoping at some point they will feel that it is not too scary. Disney's a little frightened of things that make fun of Star Wars, and this definitely does.
What I saw, I loved. I thought it was fantastic.
It's great. I mean, I'm up for leading a march on Burbank.
When you're doing something like that, that's a parody of something that has one of the most iconic scores of all time, is that theme in your head at all when you're composing?
Well, there's some practical reasons why you don't want to do too much of the original, because among other things we had to get permission. But it's also, it had its own character. After initially it was, and we do winks to John Williams because of course you must, but they're really just winks, and a lot of times it's subverting the idea more than expressing the idea.
Oh, that was mainly it. I was going to ask about the John Williams aspect of it, because it's such it's hard to think of Star Wars without those cutscenes and everything like that. And it must be, but when you're doing a parody, it's got to be tough to basically keep the same tone and theme, but do music that's appropriate for a parody setting rather than drama or action.
Well, in this, because this is a cartoon, and there was a fair amount of license to get kooky. And now the music always, in a comedy, ironically, the music really needs to be the straight man, because otherwise, if it goes, "Hey, this is funny," you've just undermined the joke. So it's very important that it be done from the viewpoint of the characters. But the characters are not really the same as the original characters. Darth Vader is in Star Wars Detours is a needy dependent, codependent of the Emperor, who is just loves torturing him more than anything else. And so in each case, and the Princess Leia is this spoiled brat, and so you really have to do things from the viewpoint of what the character depicted is, not what their source is of. I'm not scoring Darth Vader from the movies. I'm scoring the Darth Vader who's in the cartoon.
I'm really interested in the idea of working with directors, and creators in general. How much of their creative vision is explained to you, and how much guidance are you given before you're starting your process?
Well, the answer is as much as you can possibly get them to tell you want to. However, some people are more expressive than others, and some are also there's always a problem, which is that oftentimes the composer is brought in very late in the process, and so everybody else already knows all these things that are completely implicit rather, and that are not, and they don't tell you them because, well, of course everybody knows that. And so that's one of the reasons I love being involved in projects early on. I'd much rather start writing music when there's a script rather than before there's finished footage. Anything to get there. Resident Evil, for example, people have said, well, how did you wrote the song to the game. I didn't see the game until after it was released. They were still working on it when I started working on the music, on the theme song, and I was given a storyboard and a script, and it's actually a great way to work because you get to the heart of the story, which is what you're doing as a composer in media, is you're supporting story. You're not there to make great music. You're there to make a great story.
Right.
Now, if you can make great music, that's good.
Where do you start when you're approaching making something that reflects the story? You work on character themes or sort of tonal themes?
Well, I think it comes from the inside out, and you really try to figure out what is it that the story is about. Stories always have characters, and what is that character's journey? And if there's a single protagonist, you work from that. If there are multiple protagonists, then you try to figure out what do they have in common, what do they share, and that's the starting point, and that conceptualization is one of the most difficult parts of it, because that's the part you got to get right, or nothing else matters.
Well, I was going to ask about the rest of the game. How would you say scoring for video games compared to your past projects?
Well, to be clear, I was going to say, to be clear, I did not score Resident Evil. I wrote the theme song.
Right, I understand.
And so, it is, look, it's all ultimately story, whether it's a 30-second commercial or whether it's a video game that has 10 hours of music that has been layered in such ways that you can, depending upon which direction you go, you end up with something different. There are mechanical differences for sure, and but they all ultimately, the mechanics are kind of, ironically, the easiest part of the job. Making a hit work is not hard. Making it be the right feeling for what the scene is what the job really is.
Can you explain your role with the Emmys? What is exactly a governor of the Television Academy?
As soon as I find out, I'll let you know. No, there are two governors from every peer group in the Television Academy. There are, I believe, 29 peer groups now. We just added one recently, which was choreographers. And we have a number of different jobs, one of which is really simply deciding rules, because television is in this tremendous set of flux right now, and even defining what television is it's something that's changed tremendously in the last 10 or 15 years. And so that's part of the jobs of the governors, to represent the interests of your peer group. I'm a governor of the music peer group. That includes composers and songwriters and music directors and music supervisors most recently. And so in each case, we're advancing what their interests are. My fellow governor, Ricky Minor, who is the music director for American Idol most famously, but for Stevie Wonder and you name it, just was at Stevie Wonder's wedding the other day. Music directed that. But Ricky and I put together a concert called Words and Music that was just a week ago at the Television Academy, and it was music from over a dozen of the most exciting contemporary television shows, both scores and songs.
Very interesting. So you're a voting member of the Academy?
Of the Television Academy.
Yes.
Yes.
So what do you look for when you're looking to reward a composer's work? Like, what do you think makes a really great score?
Well, does it support the story? I mean, I'm sounding a little bit like a broken record here. Oh, they don't have those anymore. Oh, yes, they do. Yes, vinyl's back.
They're back. Yep.
But any rate, I think that you can have very complex scores, like somebody like Elliot Goldenthal or John Grigliano will write very complex music. You can have really, really simple stuff, like Cliff Martinez does beautiful minimalist stuff, and Carter Burwell is another one who I admire in terms of minimalism, and in television, Dave Porter, I think, is somebody really underappreciated. He did Better Call Saul, and now does. Originally did Breaking Bad and does Better Call Saul. Sometimes Dave does something where he's got like 2 notes for an entire scene, but it's the right 2 notes and it's the right sound. So really, it's whatever supports the story, and I feel that those are the people I admire.
And we got the wrap-up signal, but I just want to ask, what's your all-time favorite score?
Ooh, that's too hard.
They all say Indiana Jones to give you everybody.
Is that yours?
No, but that's what composers always say. Oh, I love the Social Network score, I will say.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Really
That's a good score. Yeah.
I feel like it flies against the script. The script is very flowery and very romanticized, and it's so bare bones and cold, and I think that it complements Sorkin's work really well.
No, I think Trent and Atticus are doing a great job on both, and I like all their work. What's your favorite score?
You know, it goes between either Vangelis's Blade Runner or I still like the original Jaws.
Well, they're both great scores, Vangelis was such a great synthesizer orchestrator that you listen to Blade Runner now and it still holds up. And most of the synth scores of that era sound creaky, and that score really works. Now, I guess if you put a gun to my head and I had to choose one, because there's so many that I love, dating back to when I was a kid and I fell in love with Dr. Zhivago and this and that. But probably, this is maybe an odd one, Gattaca by Michael Nyman. I just think he so captured what the struggle of the Ethan Hawke character was in that. It's a beautiful mixture of romanticism and minimalism. And that's one of my favorites. Cliff Martinez is a buddy. I love kind of anything that Cliff does, but I'd say that Solaris may be my favorite of Cliff's. There are others that, of course, all of Hans Zimmer's scores that I worked on, I'm partial to, because I kind of.
Did you work on Gladiator?
I didn't. That was before my time with Hans. It's a great score. I love what Lisa contributed to it as well, Lisa Gerard. And I think that may be one of Hans's best scores. That and Thin Red Line, which is often not known to the public, but is used as one of, he has a piece called Journey to the Line from Thin Red Line, one of the most tempt pieces of music in the film business. But so many, I like a lot of composers people don't know about or don't think about as being film composers. Mark Suazo, who does all of the music for did Metropolitan and Barcelona and all these other Whit Stillman films. I think John Bryan does brilliant stuff. It doesn't sound like anybody other than John Bryan. And I'm sure now that I'm running off of the mouth, there's so many that I'm going to say, oh, why didn't I say that guy? But I really feel like the people who communicate the stories. I mean, going back to Bernard Herrmann and all the people who laid the groundwork, Jerry. So there's so many great people who contributed something that we all steal from.
Right, of course.